A long simmering power struggle boiled over on February 24, 2020, when Dr. Mahathir Mohamad unexpectedly announced his resignation as Malaysia's Prime Minister. His decision prompted members of Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia, or Bersatu, to pull out of the ruling Pakatan Harapan coalition en masse, along with nearly a dozen members of Parti Keadilan Rakyat, or PKR. The mass exodus led to the collapse of the two-year-old government under the weight of internal rivalries and plunged the country into a deep political turmoil.
Within a matter of days, the political crisis broke out. We have Pakatan Harapan split.
Rival political parties then scrambled to strike deals among themselves, hoping to secure the support of at least 112 MPs out of the 220 parliamentary seats required for a simple majority to form the next government. The renegade party, Bersatu, decided to drop Dr. Mahathir as its candidate for Prime Minister and threw its support behind party president Muhyiddin Yassin. The decision was backed by two former political rivals, the United Malays National Organisation, or UMNO, and the Islamic party, BAS.
But that in itself, is an indication that Mahathir is really not in control, despite the aura of him being the centre of it all.
The political storm ended with the King's appointment of Mr. Muhyiddin Yassin as the country's 8th Prime Minister on Sunday, March the 1st, 2020. But who's really responsible for the collapse of the Pakatan Harapan government just 2 years after its historic victory in the 14th general election? Was it Muhyiddin Yassin, or was it PKR's former Deputy President, Azmin Ali? Or is the downfall a result of Dr. Mahathir's own undoing? And with the appointment of Mr. Muhyiddin as Prime Minister, will it herald the return of Malay nationalist politics, putting an end to the reformist agenda and the new Malaysia dream?
Does the end of this political drama episode mean the final whistle for Dr. Mahathir's political career? Observers who believe that Dr. Mahathir has reached the end of his political game may expect him to retire from the politics. This expectation may not be plausible since he had been seen as highly determined to continue the struggle with his new party, Pejuang. The internal crisis arising from the decision of Bersatu to leave Pakatan Harapan resulted in Dr. Mahathir expelled from the party. With some of his strong men, he went to form a new party called Pejuang. To this date, he still could not accept the National Alliance government formed by Muhyiddin Yassin and continued to actively participate in opposing the government. Not only that, Dr. Mahathir has not only proved that he will actively engage in politics, but ready to become Prime Minister again if the current government fails and he has the support of the people. He said, "If there's a support, I will make a comeback." This is one of many reasons prove that Dr. Mahathir will not retire from the political arena soon, as long as he lives and his life and his health condition improve. Race politics versus liberal politics. The key difference between Dr. Mahathir and Pakatan Harapan leaders from the DAP, PKR and UMNO is their belief in racial politics. Dr. Mahathir believes that racial-based politics is still relevant and necessary in the country, while Pakatan Harapan leaders believe that in the new Malaysia, racial-based politics is no longer relevant. This political worldview is rooted in the different goals they want to achieve. Dr. Mahathir wanted the country to achieve development, prosperity and peaceful by ensuring the poor and underdeveloped Malays will be taken care of indefinitely. Their fundamental rights such as the royal institutions, Islam, language and culture should be protected based on the social contract that was agreed upon since pre-independence. The social contract is a treaty agreed upon by the Malays and non-Malays while the country was granting of citizenship rights to over 1 million Chinese and Indian immigrants. From this historical and cultural point of views, the Malays and Bumiputras should dominate the country's politics and governance. Therefore, political cooperation should be based on these key points, according to Dr. Mahathir.
The Malaysian social contract, explained by Dr. Mahathir. Extract from the Cadet weblog, the 12th of July 2008. The Tunku, as Chief Minister of a self-governing Federation of Malaya then, decided to go for independence. The British continued to insist on citizenship rights for the Chinese and Indians as a condition for giving independence. To overcome British resistance to independence, and to gain the support of the Chinese and Indians, the Tunku decided to give 1 million citizenship to the two communities, based purely on the residents. One notable new citizen was Tun Leong Yuko, a former general in the Chinese National Army, who was later appointed governor of Malacca. It was at this stage that the leaders of the three communal parties, who had formed the government of the self-governing British Federation of Malaya, discussed and reached an agreement on the relationship between the three communities in an independent Federation of Malaya. It was to be a quid pro quo arrangement. In exchange for the 1 million citizenships, the non-Malays must recognize the special position of the Malays as the indigenous people. Certain laws, such as the preeminence of Islam as the state religion, the preservation of Malay reserve land, the position of the Malay rulers, and Malay customs, and the distribution of government jobs, were included in the understanding. For their part, the Chinese and Indian leaders, representing their parties and communities, demanded that their citizenship should be a right that could not be annulled, that they should retain their language, religion and culture, that as citizens they should have political rights as accorded to all citizens. Much of these agreements and understandings are reflected in the Federal Constitution of Independent Malaya. For everything that is accorded the Malays, there is always a provision for non-Malays. Few ever mention this fact. The only thing that attracts everyone's attention, and made a subject of the dispute, is what is accorded the Malays and other indigenous people. The embodiment of the social contract is therefore the constitution of first, the Federation of Malaya, and then Malaysia.
Dr. Mahathir's game plan. Bersatu is the dominant party in the National Alliance government led by Muhyiddin Yassin. During the Pakatan Harapan, Bersatu managed to increase the parliamentary seat from 13 to 26. Now, after leaving Pakatan Harapan, the party has not only become a leading party to the government, but has also managed to increase the seat from 26 to 36. Party president is a prime minister. 2 of the 4 senior ministers are from Bersatu. Bersatu MPs hold most of the cabinet posts, despite UMNO having the highest number of MPs. Bersatu controls 34% of the posts in the cabinet, despite having only 26% of MPs. Since the 40th general election, Dr. Muhammad Fuad Zarkashi, an UMNO Supreme Council member, has never believed in Dr. Mahathir's political game. The public was amused by Dr. Mahathir's move to join Pakatan Harapan, which has 2 of his main opposition parties, DAP and PKR, to go against Najib and Barisan Nasional in the 14th general election to save the country from the kleptocratic leader. But according to Dr. Fuad, in reality, Dr. Mahathir blamed Najib for the political failure of his son Muhyiddin. Thus, his action in joining Pakatan Harapan, according to Dr. Fuad, was to save Muhyiddin's political career. Dr. Fuad bluntly claimed,
"Whoever prevents Muhyiddin from becoming Prime Minister will be his enemy, so the PPBM, Bersatu, and the opposition alliance, Pakatan Harapan, will continue to tremble from within if Muhyiddin fails to become Prime Minister," said Dr. Fuad.
Dr. Fuad and another UMNO Supreme Council member, Husairi Abu Talib, are convinced that the political turmoil in Pakatan Harapan since the first day of his appointment as the 7th Prime Minister was Dr. Mahathir's game plan. His resignation on February 24, 2020 is also planned According to Husairi,
Dr. Mahathir's resignation as the 7th Prime Minister is a wise decision to free himself from the power transition agreement signed with the Pakatan Harapan Presidential Council before the 14th general election, and all Pakatan Harapan election promises that could not be fulfilled. Does Dr. Mahathir want to become Prime Minister again, or does he want to pave the way for his son Mukhriz to carry out the unfinished work? Among them are to fix the country's damage as a result of Najib's kleptocratic government, and to build a strong base to achieve the shared prosperity vision of 2030. Does Dr. Mahathir intend to bring Bersatu back to Pakatan Harapan? Based on his previous experience, this may not be the best option. Differences in political ideology and the struggle for the country would again be the main factors that complicate Bersatu to win the hearts of the Malays. Besides, it has become increasingly difficult to regain the confidence of DAP, PKR and UMNO, following the betrayal episodes of the Sheraton Move, initiated by Muhyiddin and Azmin Ali. Does Dr. Mahathir intend to remain in politics, without the intention of becoming Prime Minister, simply to continue the unfinished struggle? Among the most important was the struggle for the Malays, through the practice of race-based politics.
Malaysian politics after the COVID-19 and Vision 2020 in waiting seems increasingly uncertain. Whatever happened next, Dr. Mahathir had already set many records in Malaysian politics and history. As a non-agenarian leader and an elder statesman of Malaysia, he has dominated many important events in the country's political history since 1958 until his sacred year of Vision 2020. He had surpassed almost all achievement of his predecessors, and his achievement could not easily be repeated by the current or future leaders. The political drama episodes taking place in early 2020 remain a piece of living evidence of Dr. Mahathir's highly principled political leadership. Dr. Mahathir is a leader in the category of transformational leaders, not transactional leaders.
Transformational leaders are leaders who have the highest goals and clear vision to achieve, great missions to fulfill, hold to moral standards and values, and are committed to the cause. The purpose of the transformational leader's struggle is to elevate the dignity of the leader and his followers together. Whereas transactional leaders have no clear goals and vision to achieve. They are just figuring out how to keep their position at the top by manipulating their relationships with their followers. Their followers are enslaved with remuneration and handouts in the form of money, goodies, positions, etc., to remain supportive of their rule.
Dr. Mahathir is certainly not a transactional leader like Najib Razak. James McGregor Burns, 1978, explained that the characteristics and practices of transactional leadership are to use remuneration and handouts as the basis to gain support. Remuneration is possible in many forms, whether economic, political, or psychological. In the form of economics, such as giving goodies, money, and so on. Politics, such as designation and position. Psychology, such as showing concern and caring. All of this is done to gain support. Offerings like BRIM during Najib Razak era are among the best examples of transactional leadership practices in the form of economics. Reaching to the people through his campaign, Malu Apa Bosku, Nothing to be Ashamed, My Boss, is an example of transactional leadership practice in the form of psychology. Najib proudly shared one of the common dishes served at his home, the expensive quinoa rice. Dr. Mahathir sarcastically mocked him. Saya makan nasi beras tempatan saja. I eat local rice only. Concerned citizens surveyed the price tag and compared. They discovered that Najib had been spending approximately 600 ringgit or 10 kgs of quinoa rice, while Dr. Mahathir had only spent 25 ringgit for 10 kgs of local rice. The confiscation of luxury goods, cash and jewelry from Najib's condo in 2018 is worth between 900 million and 1.1 billion, while Dr. Mahathir, after more than 60 years of service, recorded in his asset and income declaration to MACC in November 2019 32.26 million in asset and 75,800 monthly income. People who supported Najib's Malu Apa Bosku campaign in rural areas and villages are living in poor condition. Some of them live from hand to mouth, far from being able to buy quinoa rice and don with jewelry and luxury. They do know about Najib's luxurious life, but they are more fascinated by his gift, like brim and goodies and house. These are some of the strengths of his transactional leadership.
According to Burns, 1978, such leadership, transactional leadership, occurs when one person takes the initiative in making contact with others for the purpose of an exchange of valued things. The exchange could be economic, or political, or psychological in nature, a swap of goods, or of one good for money, a trading of votes, between candidate and citizen, or between legislators, hospitality to another person, in exchange for willingness to listen to one's troubles. Transactional leadership practices are particularly effective for underprivileged, uneducated, and low-level thinking skills, and socioeconomic groups. These groups of people are always facing uncertainties in their lives. A transformational leader. Dr. Mahathir is a transformational leader. According to James McGregor Burns, 1978, transforming leadership occurs when one or more persons engage with others in such a way that leaders and followers raise one another to higher levels of motivation and morality. The practice of principled leadership that is the cornerstone of Dr. Mahathir's political leadership, his leadership through his example, his willingness to sacrifice for the cause, and his relentless effort to encourage people to change their thinking so that the nation can be built on knowledge, is one of the key features of his transformational leadership.
And transformational leadership is on the opposite end of what he called the full range of leadership, a continuum. I want you to think about it as a continuum, not necessarily an either or. That's an important idea. It's not that you're transactional or you're transformational, and that's it, one or the other, but rather, if you think of a continuum, starting with transactional on one end and moving to transformational on the other, then there's a sense in which, at times, based on situation, you may move back and forth across this. So what's transformational leadership all about?
We are going to look at transformational leadership theory. We'll take a look at 5 key characteristics of transformational leaders, and we'll see if you can relate to them. There's been lots of interest lately in the transformational leadership approach, but it has its origins in the late 1970s. James McGregor Burns wrote a book on leadership where he contrasted transformational leaders with transactional leadership. He used Maslow's hierarchy of needs to explain these two approaches. Transactional leadership is where a leader is mainly concerned with helping followers meet their lower level needs on the bottom 3 tiers of Maslow's pyramid by satisfying followers' psychological, safety, and belonging needs. It's a transaction. In exchange for followers' hard work, transactional leaders help followers secure these rewards. Transformational leaders take that to the next level and attempt to engage the entire person to satisfy followers' lower level needs that I mentioned, and also their higher level needs on Maslow's hierarchy, esteem and self-actualization. According to Burns, transformational leaders enhance followers' level of motivation, commitment, and ownership. Ultimately, the thinking goes, this transforms followers into leaders themselves. Johnson and Hackman describe the 5 key characteristics of transformational leaders. Let's see if you can relate to any of these personally. First, transformational leaders are creative. They're always looking for new ideas and ways to do things. They challenge business as usual. Creative people come from all walks of life. What they have in common is that they are hardworking, nonconformist in their thinking, and they're comfortable with ambiguity and complexity. Second, transformational leaders are interactive. They communicate a lot with followers. They are engaged. And through this communication, they become more aware of their followers' needs and motivations. As Johnson and Hackman say, only when the leader is involved with followers can he or she find ways to do things better. Third, transformational leaders are visionary. Some say this is their most important characteristic. They can explain in concise and clear language where they want to take the organization. They're able to explain the goal with a sense of purpose in ways that energize people and creates a standard of excellence that inspires followers. And I can think of no better person to illustrate this than Martin Luther King Jr. He articulated in compelling language a vision for the future that was worth fighting for. His famous I Have a Dream speech is perhaps one of the most vision-based communication examples there is. Fourth, transformational leaders are empowering. As I said earlier, Burns based his thinking about transformational leaders on the higher levels of Maslow's hierarchy. The top level is self-actualization. Transformational leaders, in essence, have to empower their leaders to become all they can be by delegating important jobs and then supporting and trusting followers to rise to the occasion. This also allows organizations to grow more quickly. Fifth, transformational leaders are passionate. They are true believers in their cause. They demonstrate extraordinary commitment, even in the face of repeated failure. Their passion, enthusiasm, and motivation are contagious.
He criticized the great majority of Malays who are so proud of the slogan Ketuhanan Melayu, the Malay supremacy, but do not want to change and strive to become a real master. Instead, they are willing to be enslaved with a small amount of cash, gifts, and handouts. He strongly disagreed with the BRIM distribution as it is a form of political slavery and will only lower the people's thinking. They will lose their competitiveness, be demanding, and often blame others for their weaknesses and hardships. Dr. Mahathir's leadership is intellectual leadership. He wants people to change their attitude by changing the way they think and act. According to Burns, intellectual leadership is transforming leadership. Dr. Mahathir's thinking and principle leadership are in line with other world transformational leaders such as Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, and others. They changed the world not by arrogance and retribution, but by the principled leadership that elevates them and their followers to the highest levels of morality and life goals.
The author would like to express sincere gratitude to everyone who has contributed towards the success of the publication of this book and the video sharing sessions on this YouTube channel. This Series 30 video marked the completion of the sharing sessions on the content of the book. Please feel free to explore all 30 videos on this channel.